There was no template. If I can give you a template, like, please let me give you a template. What's good, fam? I see you decided to come back. Or maybe this is your first time. Welcome. You're a real one for tuning in, and today we are discussing 5 tips for applying to grad school and 3 things I wish I knew before even deciding to apply. First, I'll go into the 3 things I wish I knew, then we'll get into the 5 tips that will hopefully help you along with the process if you do decide to apply. So 3 things I wish I knew before even hitting that application. 1, the cost. The cost alone for this PhD program, or for the applications for these PhD programs, were so much. They ranged from $100 to $150 per school. For some background, I did my master's at Stanford, but the process was very different because it was a new program and they essentially just had a very rapid turnover in the application process. I believe it was 2 weeks. We weren't required to take the GRE, so it ended up being a different process than your average grad school application process. So when I was applying to these PhD programs, it was a whole other universe for me. I, one, was not prepared for how much I'd have to spend out of pocket for preparing for grad school applications, interviews, and for prepping for the GRE. And I wish I had some foresight to know that so that I could have planned ahead financially. Also, once you're in the program, if you're applying to a PhD program, please get it with funding. Please get it with funding. Actually, no, please get it with funding. Even if you do get funding, most of these PhD programs do not give you enough to live sustainably, much less if you have an entire family to take care of, which some people in my program do. So, if there's anything you can do to prepare for that financial burden ahead of time, please do. If there are scholarships, if there are programs that help to alleviate the cost of the application process or test prep process, take it. 2, grad school is emotionally taxing. Let me tell you, when I came out of Stanford, I was feeling myself. I had gone to the therapies, I'd done the journaling, all the stuff to work on myself internally so that I can better be in control and grounded in whatever environment I was in. Boy, whew, God said, I'ma humble you, child, let me tell you, and he did. One of the most frustrating parts of grad school is how much is out of your control. You cannot control the coursework that's going to be laid on you, the deadlines that are going to be thrown your way, the expectations from your peers, your professors, and your advisor. You are not going to be able to control so many factors that happen, and that's just the academic ones. There are things that obviously are going to happen in our lives, and it just kind of feels like you're tossed in the wind. So I wish that I had, 1, gotten a therapist earlier in grad school, but 2, just done something or known so that I could have expected what I was in store for. I think I tried to prepare academically. I did a biostatistics boot camp before entering the program online, and I was preparing myself academically, but I was not preparing myself emotionally. So 1, if you can take a break before starting grad school after you get in, do that. Take a break, take an emotional, mental break. If you have projects or work that is lingering, like, try to cut that off. You do not want to feel the extra burden of having to do that on top of starting grad school. As much as you can, try not to go over your capacity. And I know that's going to differ for different folks based on what your priorities are and the things that you have to do, your responsibilities. But anything you can do to not stretch yourself thin when you're moving into this new environment, please do that. In terms of emotionally taxing things as well, they're going to be thrown at us the entire time. And I know that that's life, but it feels kind of like sadistic in grad school in terms of other people having control over you and you being a full-grown adult but feeling like you can't really do what you want. So having a support system. I had most of my support system over in California, and for the first 2 years I was flying back and forth like no other, as if I could have afforded it, which is a whole other story from my bank account. But I was really just craving some form of emotional support and love, and kind of grieving like past versions of myself where I was that confident person. I was that person who went out with friends and had time for my family and did all of these great things, and a version of myself that I was proud of and I felt like I was losing a grasp of. So anything you can do to form a support system or to inform your support system of the extra toll that this is going to take on you, let them know so that they can help. And if it's hard for you to ask for help, kind of like me, I'd recommend just being gentle with yourself and making it a practice to reach out for help whenever you can. I know pride can get in the way of a lot of that, especially if you've gotten to the point of grad school. You might think, I got this, I've been through this, whatever. No, things are going to change. There might be new obstacles you're going to face. Get help as much as you can from your support system, from therapy, from anywhere. And thank God I found just an incredible group of folks in my program. We call ourselves Library Steps. I'm not going to go into details about what that story means, but my friend group here has really been kind of like the solid ground I needed to stay centered throughout this program. 3, brand versus quality. So I know I might sound like a hypocrite coming from someone who went to both Stanford and Harvard, but I guess that means that you can take my word for it. Brand versus quality. With a lot of these schools, people will say things along the lines of, oh, that name, you'll definitely get like an A quality education there. And there's a lot of assumptions that go into the names of these schools. Realistically though, schools with the biggest name might not always give you the in-depth education that you need, or the attention that you need, right? And so make sure that you have a clear understanding of what the teaching process is at that school, what the student-professor relationships are like, if there is even relationships fostered or intentionally fostered in the school. Is there community for grad students, and do they do anything around diversity initiatives to make sure that people feel included? All of these factors that go into a sustainable learning environment, really. And you can have the biggest name on your degree, but if you do not have a sustainable learning environment, you are gonna, 1, lose yourself in the process, but 2, you won't be able to show up to the classroom fully because there's so many other things that are not going your way structurally. So we gotta figure out ways to work around it, work through it, over it. Now, I'm done with the 3 tips. If after all of that you still want to apply to grad school, good for you. I'll give you 5 tips for the application process that hopefully will help you to navigate it a little easier. I learned from me and my mistakes and the things that I wish I knew, and really just break down some of these things because I had to do so much research to figure it out. My parents didn't go to college. There was no template. If I can give you a template, please let me give you a template. Number 1, with all of these tips, keep in mind that I was applying to a public health Ph.D. program, population health sciences to be specific, and public health might look different than, say, applying for, I don't know, public policy programs or law school, med school, obviously. So keep that in mind as I'm going through these tips. 1, The GRE. So my study process, I was fortunate enough to have a month and a half of a summer to just dive in. It was me and the GRE, like we were connected at the hip, you know, me and GRE together forever. And my study process was really taking weekly exams. I used the Manhattan Prep book, which was really good. Online they had 6 exams. I think the packet at the time cost like $20 to $30, and each week I'd take a practice exam. I dedicate a certain day for going over the questions on the exams, and then the rest of the week for going through the chapters. And I think for me, in terms of the content on the GRE, a lot of it is stuff from really high school. So it was really just a process of trying to remember all of the things I learned like 4 or 5 years prior to that, and practice exam taking and the structure of the GRE, which was really important. I think the biggest thing is the timing, right? For the most part, we probably know all of the content on there or have seen it at some point in our life. It's really just being able to keep up with the timing of the exam. And so those practice exams, I made sure to stick to a very strict time restraint according to the structure of the GRE. And that was really it. I studied for the month and a half and took the exam, and they got what they got. 2, stay organized during the application process. I had a whole Excel sheet, and I'll include a little thing of what it looked like. Mine was all over the place. You can do better than I did. I know I'm saying stay organized. My Excel sheet was organized for me, okay? And really what I included were the list of the schools I was applying to, the different programs that they offered, and their due dates. I also included my own deadlines, or the deadlines that I strive to get them in by. I included all the materials that they needed and the recommenders that I wanted for each school. For public health, there is a software called SOFAs. So that kind of organizes all of the information for you, and you can apply to multiple schools through that software. And there are some schools that don't apply under SOFA, so that was different. But having the spreadsheet helped me to stay organized. I was able to kind of rank which schools were at the top of my list for me, and really just visually see how I had to spread my time out in order to accomplish my goal. Also, what helps with staying organized is getting your CV in shape. Like, let that ish work out. Like, come on, get your CV in shape. I don't even think I had a CV when I was applying to grad school. I had a resume, and fortunately at Stanford they had a department that would look over your CV for you and give you some advice. But really, you're just highlighting all of the wonderful things that you have accomplished, right? And I even included some courses that might have been relevant to the programs that I was applying to, just so, for the most part, if they're looking over the transcript, there are so many classes you've taken, you really want to highlight, these are the courses I've taken that are preparing me for this next step. For me, the CV really helped with organizing the things I wanted to mention in my application, and also for my letter of recommendations. So get that CV in shape, please do. The essay for a PhD program is going to look a little different than the one for a master's. Once again, because I had kind of an unconventional master's application experience, I can't really speak in detail about what that process is like broadly, but for a PhD program, a lot of the essay material is going to be more of a research proposal than a personal statement. When we applied to college, a lot of our essays were about our personal lives, things that have led us to this point in time, things that we want to bring with us into these schools. For the PhD program, for the most part, that's not really what they're looking for. They want to see that your research interests fit within their academic institution, and that there are professors available for your interests as well. So it's kind of looking like a little dating situation. Like, does this work for you? Is this working for me? You know, is there a connection? Anyways, so that's how you should structure your statement for grad school apps, particularly for a PhD. You want to highlight what your research interest is, any prior work you've already done on that, what exactly about this institution is going to help you to move that work further along, and are there professors that are already doing similar work who can help mentor you and shape your work even further. Now, please keep in mind that you don't have much space, so we're not asking for an entire manuscript to be included in there, but really just showing that you have an understanding of what your interests are and where you want to go and how the school is going to help you get there. I followed a very similar template for all the schools that I was applying to, and in the first section I weaved in how my research interests began and how that was relevant to my personal experience and story. Now, if your research interests are not relevant to your personal life or your personal life story, do not force it. Once again, it's not a personal statement. After that, I included a section of the research I was currently doing and the work I wanted to do moving forward. And then in the last section, I included professors by name that I think at that institution would help me to further my academic interests. So really, the first two parts were the same across all of the schools I was applying to, and then the third part was different based on the school I was applying to. 4. Location. I wish that I had thought about this more. When I was applying to these schools, I was so caught up in the advisors I was applying to work under that I didn't really think through the fact that I'd be committing to 4 to potentially 6 years of my life in a new place. And as much as my advisor can be incredible and amazing, I don't see them that often, right? I'm spending most of my time in classrooms with other peers, with other professors, and living my life in whatever city I'm based in, right? So in hindsight, I don't know if the Boston-Cambridge area was really for me, and I wish I had thought about it a little bit more before committing to the school, just so that I'd know and I could prepare myself for what I was getting into. So keep in mind, you can have an incredible advisor, but there's so many other people that you're going to be interacting with on a daily basis, and you need to make sure that you're in a place that you like and that you want to live your life in for however many years you're committing to this program for. Location does matter, and I know it might sound trivial when I say it right now, but when you're living it and experiencing it and it is your life, it's going to be more to you then. So make sure you keep that in mind. 5. Ask for your letters of recommendation in advance. We don't do it late. Just give people time. If you're like me, I found it hard to connect with a lot of professors at school, and so the letter of recommendation process really just kind of gave me anxiety because I felt like my future was in the hands of someone who may or may not have really known who I was fully. And quite honestly, with all the code switching and things that I have to do to fit into academic spaces, I don't think any professor has ever fully and truly known me. So there are things that you can do to facilitate the process for that professor who's writing your letter of recommendation. Do it. Things that I did. I sent out an initial email just expressing interest in having them be one of my letter writers. I included information about why I chose them specifically. If I took a class with them, what stood out to me in that class? How did I grow as a student because of their teaching? And really just emphasizing the ways in which they helped me to decide to go into academia and pursue this program, or how their class and their work inspired the work that I want to do. During the meeting, get to know your professor and let them get to know you. There are so many things that you can show on paper that will not get communicated in a face-to-face interaction. Your passion, your drive, your the way that your face lights up when you speak about certain things, right? So if you can have that face-to-face time with your professor, it'll make your letter of recommendation that much better. The other thing, professors are so busy, so anything you can do to outline the process in detail for them and give them essentially a step-by-step tutorial of what their requirements are and their responsibilities, the better. I sent an email that really just outlined the minor details of the SOFA applications, the schools that weren't under the SOFA application that would have to be submitted separately. I included the type of email address they'd have to use because I think for some there was a qualification that it needed to come from a .edu address. I included the email that the request would be sent from because, for instance, if it was through Harvard, it might come from a request at something.edu address that didn't even say Harvard's name, just to make sure that it didn't go to their spam folder. So all of those minor logistic details so that you make sure everything is smooth for everyone. It's better to have one thorough email sent than to have communication have to go back and forth 10 million times in order to get this thing done. So that is that. Those are my tips for applying to grad school, and also some things that I hope you think about before even deciding to make the leap. I know it is a long process and journey, and it is a commitment at the end of the day. So take time, reflect on it, think about whether it is what you need. One of the things in the interview process that a professor asked me was, why grad school now? And I think it threw me off because I was like, why not grad school? And I think the purpose of that question from that professor was to get me to think critically about this next step that I was taking. So make sure that before you take this leap that you really think through what your needs are, what your goals are for your future, whether or not an investment in this degree, if you're paying for it like for a master's program, or getting paid pretty minimally for a PhD program, that you know what you're getting into and that you are sure that it's going to be something that will benefit you in the end, because at the end of the day, these institutions weren't made for us, but we can use their resources and their tools to better ourselves and better our communities and just uplift one another and love each other and like, give me a hug. So thank you for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button below. Feel free to like and comment if you have any other questions or advice that you want to share with the community. Drop that below. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you may have, and I'd love to hear more about your experience with the grad school application process, or if you've just started grad school, what are some struggles that you're going through. I definitely want to do a future video on my transition into grad school because, ooh, child, that was raggedy. So share that below and I'll be sure to incorporate it in my next video. And thank you for tuning in. Be well.